The monastery library doors locked behind her at midnight, and Hanna Mercer knew with the cold certainty of the deeply stupid that she had just fallen asleep in a restricted archive belonging to something that was definitely not the church. She woke in a bed she had never seen. Heavy silk sheets, the color of old wine. Stone ceiling vaulted so high the shadows pooled like water in the corbels. Her boots stood paired beside an armchair she could not possibly afford on 3 academic grants combined, and someone had tucked a blanket over her shoulders with the kind of care that made her chest hurt. Her fingers were still stained with iron gall ink. Hanna sat up fast enough to make her head spin. The last thing she remembered was the manuscript. Folio 37. The decorator's hand had changed mid-quire, and she'd been trying to work out whether the exemplar had switched or the scribe had simply gotten tired, and the script was so small she'd had to lean close, and the chair in the stacks had been comfortable, and oh no, she said aloud. Oh no, no, no. She had fallen asleep in the most restricted section of the Coimbra archive. The section she had signed 4 separate non-disclosure agreements to access. The section that officially did not exist, in a library 11 floors beneath a Portuguese monastery, containing manuscripts that appeared on no catalog anywhere in the world. Also, the section owned by a vampire king. That last part had been mentioned in passing by the nervous Monsignor who'd unlocked the iron gates for her 3 weeks ago. He'd said it the way someone might mention that a house has temperamental plumbing. The materials do have a proprietor. Best not to disturb anything unnecessarily. Hanna had assumed it was a euphemism. An old Portuguese family with ecclesiastical ties. Some count or duke whose ancestors had endowed the monastery. Then she'd seen the manuscripts. No human institution would have kept these. Not hidden. Not for centuries. The dates alone made her hands shake. She was a paleographer, doctorate from Cambridge, specialized in late medieval administrative scripts. She had spent 5 years of her life learning to read the handwriting of dead bureaucrats. The documents in the Coimbra archive were written in a script that had never been taught in any human chancery. It was a court hand, fluid, formal, full of ligatures that made her eyes cross. But the abbreviations were wrong, the letter forms were wrong, and the contents. Hanna swung her legs out of bed. Her wool tights had a hole at the knee. She'd worn her 3rd best sweater because the archive was cold, and she'd expected to be alone with dust and parchment, not waking up in a bedroom that looked like it belonged in a museum dedicated to tasteful Renaissance excess. The door opened. Hanna jumped badly enough to bite her tongue. The man who entered was not the Monsignor. He was tall and slim, dressed in a black shirt with the cuffs turned back, and he moved the way dancers moved when they were not thinking about it. White hair pulled back from a face that was too sharp to be kind and too amused to be cruel. His skin had the translucent quality of marble held up to light. When he looked at her, his eyes were the dark pale gray of winter rivers, and Hanna understood 3 things very quickly. 1, she was in serious trouble. 2, the proprietor was not a euphemism. 3, the vampire king was frankly the most beautiful man she had ever seen in her life, and her brain needed to shut up about that immediately. "You're awake," he said. His voice was warm, lightly accented in a way she could not place. "Good. I was beginning to worry I'd miscalculated the carry." Hanna opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "You carried me?" 11 floors, he agreed. "You sleep remarkably heavily. I thought you might wake somewhere around floor 6, but no. I fell asleep in your archive." "You did. I'm so sorry," Hanna said, and she meant it with the kind of fervor usually reserved for religious experience. "I didn't mean to. I was working, and the manuscript was... I didn't mean to be disrespectful." "You were taking notes," he said. "Your notebook fell on the floor. I put it on the desk over there." He nodded toward a massive table beneath the window. A narrow Gothic window. It was still dark outside. "Your transcription work is excellent, by the way. I haven't seen anyone parse Vespasian's hand that cleanly in 2 centuries. Hanna blinked. "You read my notes?" "I was curious what had absorbed you so thoroughly that you forgot to leave before dawn." "It's not dawn yet. 3 hours off." Relief made her knees weak. The monastery kept her on a strict schedule, down into the archive at sunset, out before the first light. She'd signed a waiver about that too, something about preservation conditions and archival security. Now she understood why. "I should go," she said. "You should have tea," he said, "and possibly an explanation." "An explanation of why I have a paleographer in my library." "The Monsignor hired me," Hanna said quickly. "I have a contract. I'm cataloging the administrative manuscripts, specifically the late 14th and early 15th century materials. I'm the only person in Europe who specializes in that particular court script variant, and apparently you have 73 uncatalogued volumes written in it, so—" She stopped because he was grinning at her. "Yes," he said. "I know. I'm the one who hired you." "Oh." "Through the Monsignor, because humans tend to find direct contact alarming." "I wouldn't have been alarmed," Hanna said, which was a monstrous lie, and they both knew it. "You're alarmed now. I'm mortified now. There's a difference." She pushed her hair back from her face. It had come half out of its braid. "I really am sorry. That archive is— I know how important those documents are. I shouldn't have—" "Dr. Mercer," he said, and she had not told him her title, which meant he knew who she was, which meant you've been working 14-hour days for 3 weeks. You've filled 2 notebooks and correctly identified 13 different scribal hands. You fell asleep because you're doing exactly what I need you to do. I'm not offended." Hanna looked at him. He looked back, perfectly calm, perfectly sincere. "Tea?" he said again. "Okay," Hanna said. His name was Valerian Jaal, and he was 943 years old. He told her that in the same tone someone might mention they lived in the next village over. They were sitting in a room that was part library, part parlor, with a fire burning and a hearth big enough to roast a sheep. Hanna had her tea. It was the best tea she'd ever tasted, which seemed unfair on top of everything else. "The archive," Valerian said, "is not precisely secret, but it's not public either. Most of the documents are internal. Treaties, agreements, legal codes, things that matter to my people but wouldn't mean much to yours." "They mean something to me," Hanna said. "Yes," Valerian said. "That's why you're here." He was sitting across from her, one leg crossed over the other, looking like a Renaissance portrait of contained danger. His eyes hadn't left her face. It was distracting. "I've spent 3 years trying to find someone who could read the old scripts," he said. "The formal hand. The one used in the courts before we centralized. It's not taught anymore, and most of the people who learned it are dead." "I wrote my dissertation on it," Hanna said. "Or I thought I did. The variant I studied was from the Burgundian Chancery, very specialized, very obscure. I thought it was a French administrative quirk. I didn't know—" She stopped. "I didn't know it was yours. It wasn't, not originally, but we borrowed from you and you borrowed from us, and after 700 years the influences tangle." He leaned forward. "How much have you cataloged?" "Maybe a third of the first room. I'm trying to date and identify each manuscript before I move on. There's a folio chronicle that I think is early 1300s, and there's a rent roll that's definitely 1420s, and—" She stopped. "Why does a vampire king have a rent roll?" "Because even vampires have to manage property," Valerian said, grinning. "We're not that romantic." "But you don't—" Hanna stopped. "Do you eat?" "No." "Do you sleep?" "Not the way you do." "So why do you need property?" "To live in," Valerian said patiently. "To store things in. To keep humans from asking too many questions about the strange pale people who never age. We've spent a long time learning how to exist alongside you. Property law is part of that." Hanna sat back. The fire crackled. Outside the window, the sky was still black. "You said you needed me for something specific," she said. "I do." "What?" Valerian looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "There's a document in the archive called the Blood Concordat. It's a treaty, very old, very important. It's the legal foundation for how we interact with humans. Specifically, it's the law that forbids us from hunting you." Hanna's tea had gone cold in her hands. "That's a law?" she said. "Not just custom? Morality? No." His voice was very calm. "It's law. Binding law." There are consequences for breaking it, but law only works if the document holds. What do you mean, holds? I mean the original manuscript is the only legal copy. If something were to happen to it, the law would lapse. And there are vampires who would very much like that to happen. Hanna set her cup down because her hands had started shaking. Someone wants to destroy it, she said. Not destroy. That would be too obvious. But there are other ways to make a document meaningless. You could remove a page, alter a clause, replace a section with something that changes the meaning. He met her eyes. You're the only person I've found who can read the hand it's written in well enough to authenticate it. The only person who could tell me if something's been changed. You want me to verify it? I want you to read it, Valerian said. Every word, every line, and tell me if anything is wrong. The fire was warm on her face. The room was very quiet. When? Hanna said. Tomorrow night, Valerian said. If you're willing. Of course I'm willing, Hanna said. This is the most important paleographic work I've ever been offered. Possibly the most important paleographic work anyone's ever been offered. If you have a treaty that survived 7 centuries intact, I didn't say it was intact, Valerian said. Hanna stopped. There's a page missing, he said. I don't know when it was removed. The manuscript is kept under guard, but the guard changes and people get careless, and 700 years is a long time. The missing page is from the section on enforcement. The consequences for breaking the law. Without it, the law is... He paused. Disputed. So you need me to tell you what's missing. I need you to tell me if what I have is real, Valerian said. Because there are already 2 replacement pages in circulation. Forgeries. Both claim to be the original. Both have support from different factions. And I don't know which is real, or if either of them are. You need a textual comparison, Hanna said. Her brain was already working through it. Ink composition, parchment aging, scribal patterns. I'll need access to the full manuscript, and any other documents from the same period, same scriptorium. I'll need to analyze the hand, the materials, You'll have everything, Valerian said. But Dr. Mercer, you need to understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't an academic exercise. There are people who will not want you to succeed. You mean vampires? Yes, dangerous vampires. All vampires are dangerous, Valerian said quietly. But some of us are worse than others. Hanna looked at him. White-haired, gray-eyed, sitting with the perfect stillness of something that did not need to breathe. He'd carried her 11 floors. He'd tucked a blanket over her. He'd read her notes and praised her transcription. Are you dangerous? She said. Yes, Valerian said, but not to you. Dawn came, and Hanna left the monastery with her notebook and a stipend payment 3 times her usual rate. The city above was just waking up. Lisbon in early spring, the light soft and golden, the streets still cool. She bought a pastry from a bakery near her hostel and ate it without tasting it. A vampire king had carried her to bed. She was going to authenticate the most important legal document in vampire history. She was definitely going to get herself killed. Hanna went back to the hostel, slept for 6 hours, woke up, and spent the afternoon reading everything she could find on medieval treaty law. Not because it would help she wasn't a legal historian, but because if she didn't do something academic, she was going to lose her mind. At sunset, she went back to the monastery. The Monsignor met her at the gate. He looked nervous. He'd looked nervous every time she'd seen him, but tonight it was worse. Dr. Mercer, he said, His Majesty asked me to bring you down personally. His Majesty? King Valerian, the Monsignor said, as though this should have been obvious. Right, Hanna said. Of course. They descended, 11 floors, just as Valerian had said. Stone stairs worn smooth by centuries of feet. The air grew colder and drier as they went down. Good for parchment, bad for humans who hadn't brought a heavy enough coat. The archive was just as she'd left it. 3 rooms, stone-walled, lined floor to ceiling with shelving. Manuscripts in stacks, codices in chains, the smell of old leather and dust and the particular sweetness of aged parchment. Hanna had worked in archives all over Europe, and she'd never seen one this well preserved. Valerian was waiting in the 3rd room. He'd changed clothes. Tonight it was a dark coat over a white shirt. fitted enough to suggest that vampires either had excellent tailors or did not gain weight. Probably both. His hair was down, falling past his shoulders, and Hanna tried very hard not to think about the fact that she was about to spend the night alone with him in a locked archive. "Dr. Mercer," he said, "thank you for coming." "You're paying me," Hanna said, "and also this is my job." "Still," Valerian said. He gestured to the table. "I had the manuscript brought up." It was lying on a book cradle, open to the first folio. The parchment was pale gold, the ink dark and even. The script was the same hand she'd been cataloging for 3 weeks, but tighter, more formal. This was a presentation copy. Hanna stepped closer. She'd brought gloves, but Valerian shook his head. "The oils won't hurt it," he said, "and you'll need to feel the surface." He was right. Hanna touched the edge of the parchment, felt the texture. Calfskin, scraped thin, burnished smooth. The kind of preparation that took weeks. This had been made by someone who knew what they were doing. "When was this copied?" she said. 1324, Valerian said. "The treaty itself is older, but the original was falling apart. This was made as the legal copy, signed and witnessed by all the kings." "How many kings?" 7 at the time. There are fewer now. Hanna turned the page carefully. The text was in Latin, but the script was the same court hand she'd been learning. Formal, dense, full of the elaborate ligatures and abbreviations that made medieval manuscripts so hard for modern readers. But she could parse it. She'd spent years learning to parse it. "This is beautiful work," she said. The scribe was trained, really trained. Look at the consistency of the minim strokes and the decoration. She pointed to an illuminated initial. "That's gold leaf, real gold. This was expensive." "It was important," Valerian said. Hanna turned another page. And another. The text was legal language, dry and precise. Definitions of territory, agreements on jurisdiction, rules about violence and retribution. And then, halfway through, a section that made her stop. "This is the hunting law," she said. "Yes?" She read it slowly. The Latin was clear enough. "No vampire shall take the life of a human for sustenance. No vampire shall hunt within human settlements. No vampire shall compel or coerce a human into providing blood without clear and willing consent." "This is comprehensive," Hanna said, "and surprisingly humane." "We're not monsters," Valerian said quietly. "We never were. But we've had to learn how to prove it." Hanna looked up at him. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "The missing page," she said. "Where was it?" 3 pages forward. She turned. The next folio was fine. The one after that was fine. The third, there. The parchment was torn. Not cleanly. Someone had ripped the page out, leaving a ragged edge along the binding. Hanna's stomach dropped. "When did you notice?" she said. 60 years ago, Valerian said. "I check the manuscript every decade. In 1966, the page was there. In 1976, it was gone. And the forgeries? Appeared within 5 years of each other, both around 1980, both claiming to be the lost page. Do you have them?" "I have copies," Valerian said. He reached into his coat and pulled out 2 folded papers. Modern printer paper, which looked absurd next to the medieval manuscript. "These are photographs, high resolution. The originals are being held by the 2 factions that claim them." Hanna unfolded the first photograph. The text was in the same script or close enough. The parchment looked right. "But this is too clean," she said. "Look at the edges. No wear, no fading. If this page had been in the manuscript for 7 centuries, it would show the same aging as the rest." "That's what I thought," Valerian said, "but I'm not an expert." Hanna unfolded the second photograph. This one was better. The parchment had the right amount of wear, and the ink had faded in a way that looked authentic. But the script. "This isn't the same hand," she said. "Look at the letter forms. The scribe who wrote this manuscript has a very distinctive A. It's almost closed at the top. This page has an open A. It's close, but it's not the same. You can tell that from a photograph?" "I've been staring at this hand for 3 weeks," Hanna said. I could identify this scribe's work in my sleep. Valerian was very still. Then he said, "So both are forgeries." "I think so," Hanna said. "But I'd need to see the originals to be sure. Photographs can be manipulated, and I'd need more comparative samples, other documents from the same period, same scriptorium. If I can build a profile of this scribe's work, I can authenticate anything written in this hand." "I can get you the documents," Valerian said. "But the originals, that's more complicated." "Why?" "Because the people holding them don't want me to have them. And they definitely don't want a human expert examining them." "So what do we do?" Valerian looked at her. In the lamplight, his eyes were more silver than gray. "There's a session in 3 weeks," he said. "A gathering of the kings and their courts. Both factions will be there. Both will be presenting their pages as evidence. If you can attend as my sworn expert, if you can examine both pages in open session and render a judgment, then we'll know which is real," Hanna said. "Or if either of them are," Valerian said. "But Dr. Mercer, you need to understand what you're agreeing to. This session will not be safe. There are people who will do anything to keep their forgery from being exposed." "You're asking me to testify in a vampire court?" "Yes. And if I say no, then I'll find another way," Valerian said. "But it will take longer, and the law will remain disputed, and people will die because of it." Hanna looked down at the manuscript. 700 years old. A treaty written to keep humans safe. A law that mattered. "I'll do it," she said. For the next 3 weeks, Hanna lived in the archive. Valerian brought her everything. Manuscripts from the same period, written by the same scribes. Legal documents, personal letters, even a few poems. Hanna cataloged each one, noted every variation in the script, built a profile of the scribe's hand so detailed she could have reconstructed it from memory. The scribe's name, according to a colophon in one of the chronicles, was Vespasian. No surname. Just Vespasian, scribe to King Alexander of the Northern Court. He'd been human, Valerian told her. Hired specifically because his handwriting was elegant and his discretion absolute. He'd worked for the Northern Court for 40 years and then retired to a monastery in Estonia where he'd died of old age and been buried with honors. "He was good," Hanna said, looking at a sample of his work. A letter, written in the same fluid hand she'd been studying. "Really good. Look at the consistency. Every letter is perfectly formed." He was proud of it, Valerian said. He was sitting across from her, reading something else. He'd taken to working in the archive with her. At first, Hanna had found it distracting, but she'd gotten used to it. He was a quiet presence, and he didn't interrupt unless she asked him something. "I met him once. He showed me a book of hours he'd copied. Took him 3 years. "You met him?" Hanna said. "I was younger then," Valerian said, "and more interested in manuscripts than I probably should have been." "You're interested in manuscripts now. I'm interested in keeping my people from breaking a law that's kept us alive for 7 centuries, Valerian said. "That's different." Hanna looked at him. He'd put his hair up tonight, tied back in a way that showed the sharp lines of his face. He'd been wearing modern clothes every night, but they fit him the way historical clothing fit, like he was used to being looked at and didn't care. "Can I ask you something?" Hanna said. "Of course." "Why do you care?" She gestured at the manuscript. "I mean, you're the king. You could just decide, couldn't you?" "I could," Valerian said. "But law doesn't work like that. Not sustainable law. If I make a decision based on my own authority, it's only good as long as I'm in power. The moment I'm gone, someone else can unmake it. But if the decision is based on the law on a document everyone agreed to, then it survives me." "You're thinking long term." "I've been alive for 900 years, Valerian said. "Long term is the only way I know how to think." He said it lightly, but there was something in his voice that made Hanna pause. "What happens if the law lapses?" she said. Valerian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There are vampires who remember the old ways, before the treaty, when we hunted humans the way you hunt animals. It wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't moral. But it was easy, and some of them want to go back to that. You don't. No, Valerian said. I don't. I think we're better than that. I think we've built something worth keeping. But I'm not the only voice, and I can't force people to agree with me. All I can do is make sure the law holds. Hanna looked down at the manuscript. The ink was dark against the pale parchment. The words were 700 years old, written by a man who'd been dead for centuries. But they still mattered. I'll make sure, she said. The night before the session, Valerian brought her a dress. Hanna stared at it. I have clothes. You have academic clothes, Valerian said. This is a formal session. You'll need to look the part. The dress was deep blue, almost black, with long sleeves and a neckline that was lower than Hanna usually wore, but not indecent. The fabric was heavy, some kind of silk blend that moved like water. It was beautiful. I can't wear this, Hanna said. Why not? Because I'm a paleographer. I wear cardigans and wool tights. I don't... She gestured at the dress. I don't do this. You're not just a paleographer tonight, Valerian said. You're my expert, my witness. You're standing in front of 7 vampire courts and telling them what's real and what's not. You need to look like someone who knows what she's talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. I know, Valerian said, but they need to believe it. Hanna took the dress. It was heavier than it looked. She held it up against herself. It would fit. Where's the session? She said. Here, Valerian said. The monastery. There's a chamber beneath the archive. It's used for formal gatherings. How far beneath? Far enough that no one above will hear. That was not comforting. Hanna wore the dress. It fit perfectly, which was alarming because she definitely hadn't given Valerian her measurements. She braided her hair and pinned it up, put on the only pair of nice shoes she'd brought, and met him at the archive entrance at midnight. He'd changed too. Black coat, black trousers, a white shirt that looked like it cost more than her entire wardrobe. His hair was down again, white against the dark fabric. He looked like something out of a painting. A very expensive, very dangerous painting. You look terrified, he said. I am terrified, Hanna said. Don't be, Valerian said. You're under my protection. No one will touch you. What if they don't believe me? They'll believe you, Valerian said. You're very convincing when you talk about manuscripts. He said it with a small grin. And despite everything, Hanna laughed. Come on, Valerian said. Let's go make some people very unhappy. The chamber was below the archive, 2 more floors down, accessible only by a narrow staircase that looked like it had been carved out of the rock. The walls were damp and cold, and Hanna's shoes were absolutely not appropriate for this. At the bottom, there was a door, iron-banded, heavy. Valerian pushed it open. The chamber inside was huge, vaulted ceiling, stone walls, lit by what must have been 100 candles. There were seats arranged in a semicircle, and every seat was full. Vampires. Hanna had never seen so many in one place. They were all pale, all still in that way that made her hindbrain scream. White hair, white skin, eyes that reflected the candlelight like mirrors. Some of them were dressed in modern clothes. Others wore things that looked historical long coats, embroidered waistcoats, clothing that belonged in museums. They all turned to look at her when she entered. Hanna stopped walking. Valerian's hand touched her elbow, gentle. It's all right, he said quietly. Just stay with me. He led her to the center of the chamber. There was a table there, and on the table were 2 manuscript pages under glass. The forged pages. Hanna's fear shifted into focus. She knew manuscripts. She could do this. Valerian stepped forward. My lords and ladies, he said. His voice carried. Thank you for attending. You know why we're here. 2 pages, both claiming to be the lost section of the Blood Concordat, both critical to the interpretation of the law. I have brought an expert to examine them. There was a murmur. Hanna caught words. Human. Risk. Absurd. Dr. Hanna Mercer, Valerian said, gesturing to her. Paleographer, specialist in late medieval court scripts. She spent the last 3 weeks studying the Concordat and every other document written by the scribe who copied it. If anyone can authenticate these pages, it's her. Hanna stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but she clenched them and they stopped. "I'll need to examine both pages," she said. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "Directly, not under glass." There was another murmur. A vampire in the front row, older, with a face like a hatchet, leaned forward. "Absolutely not. The pages are too valuable to be handled by someone who knows what she's doing," Hanna said. "I've been handling medieval manuscripts since I was 20 years old. I'm not going to damage them." The vampire's eyes narrowed. Valerian moved slightly, just a step, so he was between Hanna and the rest of the room. "The pages will be examined," he said. "That's not optional." The hatchet-faced vampire sat back. Someone else removed the glass. Hanna pulled on her gloves, she'd brought them despite Valerian's earlier advice, and lifted the first page. It was parchment. Old parchment. The surface was smooth under her fingers, the kind of smoothness that came from age and handling. The script was in the same style as the Concordat, the same hand, but she turned it over, looked at the verso, brought it closer to the candlelight. "This isn't right," she said. "What do you mean?" someone said. "The ink," Hanna said. "Look at the way it's faded. It's even, too even. Natural fading isn't even. It concentrates in some areas and skips others depending on exposure to light and air. This looks like it's been artificially aged." "That's speculation," someone else said. "It's analysis," Hanna said. "And there's more. Look at the stitching." She pointed to the edge where the page would have been bound. "These holes don't match the Concordat. The spacing is off by 3 millimeters. This page was never bound in that manuscript." She set it down and picked up the second page. This one was better. The parchment had the right kind of wear, and the ink had faded naturally. But the script, Hanna looked closer, pulled out the magnifying glass she'd brought, studied the letter forms. "This isn't the same scribe," she said. "Explain," Valerian said. "The scribe who copied the Concordat had a very distinctive hand," Hanna said. She was talking faster now, the way she did when she was sure of something. "His A is almost closed at the top. His G has a very long descender. His D has a slight backward slant. This page has none of those features. The script is similar, but it's not the same. Someone tried to copy his style, but they didn't get it quite right." There was silence. Then the hatchet-faced vampire stood. "This is absurd. You're telling us that both pages are forgeries based on ink and letter forms? That's not evidence. That's academic nonsense." "It's expertise," Hanna said. She was angry now, the fear burned away. "And it's correct. Both of these pages are fakes. Neither of them was written by Vespasian. Neither of them was ever part of the Blood Concordat. And if you'd bothered to consult an actual expert before now, you would have known that." The vampire took a step forward. Valerian moved faster. He didn't touch the other vampire. He just stood there, between him and Hanna, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Lord Casimir," Valerian said quietly, "sit down." Casimir stared at him. For a moment, Hanna thought he was going to refuse. Then he sat. Valerian turned back to the room. "Dr. Mercer has rendered her judgment," he said. "Both pages are forgeries. The original is still missing. The Concordat remains incomplete." "Then the law is disputed," someone said. "The law is intact," Valerian said. His voice was colder than Hanna had ever heard it. The missing page outlined the consequences for breaking the hunting prohibition. It didn't change the prohibition itself. That part is clear. No vampire shall hunt humans. That's the law. It always has been. Without enforcement. "There is enforcement," Valerian said. "Me." The room went very, very quiet. "If anyone here believes the law has lapsed," Valerian said, "if anyone here believes they're free to hunt humans because a page is missing, they're welcome to test that theory. I will personally ensure they regret it." No one spoke. "Session adjourned," Valerian said. He turned, took Hanna's arm, and walked her out of the chamber. They made it back to the archive before Hanna's knees gave out. She sat down hard on the stone floor, her back against the wall, and put her head between her knees. She was shaking. She couldn't stop shaking. Valerian crouched in front of her. "Breathe," he said. "I'm breathing." Slower. Hanna breathed slower. The shaking eased. She looked up at him. "Did I just call a vampire lord's evidence academic nonsense?" she said. "You did," Valerian said. He was grinning. It was spectacular. "I'm going to die." "You're not going to die. You're under my protection, remember? Lord Casimir looked like he wanted to eat me." "Lord Casimir looks like that at everyone," Valerian said. "He's not going to touch you. No one is. You did exactly what I needed you to do." Hanna leaned her head back against the wall. The stone was cold and solid. Real. "Both pages were fake," she said. "Yes." "So the original is still out there?" "Or destroyed," Valerian said. "That's possible too." "But you can't prove it's destroyed." "No." "So the law stays disputed." "The law stays intact," Valerian said. "I made that clear." "You threatened them." "I did." Hanna looked at him. He was still crouched in front of her, close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked calm, the way he always looked. "You meant it," she said. "Yes," Valerian said. "I did. You'd really enforce the law yourself, if I had to, even against other vampires." "Especially against other vampires," Valerian said. "We wrote that law for a reason. I'm not going to let it fall apart because someone wants to go back to killing humans for sport." Hanna believed him. That was the strange part. She believed him completely. "Thank you," she said, "for protecting me in there." "You protected yourself," Valerian said. "I just made sure no one interrupted." He stood, offered her his hand. Hanna took it. His fingers were cold, but his grip was steady. He pulled her to her feet. "Come on," he said. "I'll walk you up." They climbed 11 floors in silence. Hanna's shoes pinched. The dress was too heavy. She was exhausted and wired at the same time, her brain still spinning through everything that had happened. At the top, Valerian paused. "You were brilliant tonight," he said. "I was terrified." "You were both," Valerian said. "But you didn't let the fear stop you. That's what matters." Hanna looked at him. The monastery corridor was dark, but she could see him clearly. White hair, gray eyes, a face that was too sharp to be human. He'd carried her to bed 3 weeks ago. He'd given her tea and explained treaties. He'd brought her a dress and stood between her and a room full of vampires who would have torn her apart. "Why did you really hire me?" she said. Valerian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because you're the best, and because I needed someone who would tell the truth even if it was inconvenient." "That's not a very vampire reason." "No," Valerian said. "It's not." He was standing close enough that Hanna could feel the cold radiating off him. She should step back. She didn't step back. "I should go," she said. "You should," Valerian agreed. Neither of them moved. Then Valerian reached out, very slowly, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were cold against her skin. "Good night, Dr. Mercer," he said. "Good night," Hanna said. She left before she could do something stupid. The next night, Hanna went back to the archive and found a note on her desk. It was written in Valerian's hand. She recognized it now, elegant and precise. The note said, "4th room. You'll want to see this." There was a 4th room. Hanna walked through the archive. 3 rooms, just as she'd always thought. But at the back of the 3rd room, behind a shelf, there was a door she'd never noticed. It was unlocked. The 4th room was smaller than the others, more of a cell than a chamber. There was a single shelf, and on that shelf was a wooden box. Inside the box was a manuscript. Hanna lifted it carefully. It was a small codex, bound in leather, the pages made of the same high-quality parchment as the Concordat. She opened it to the first page. It was written in Vespasian's hand. No, not Vespasian's. This script was similar but rougher, less formal. This was a draft hand, the kind of script someone used when they were writing for themselves. Hanna turned the page and stopped. It was a decree. Dated 1349, signed by Valerian Jaal, king of the Eastern court. The text was in Latin, but Hanna's Latin was good enough. She read it once, read it again. It was a hunting decree. It authorized vampires to hunt humans in a specific region, somewhere in what was now Poland, for a period of 6 months. The justification was famine. The vampire population was starving, and the human population was sparse enough that limited hunting would not be noticed. Hanna felt sick. She turned another page. There was a note, written in the same rough hand. This one was in a language she didn't recognize, but there was a translation clipped to it. Modern paper, modern handwriting. The note said, "I regret this more than I can say. I have spent 200 years trying to make up for it. I will spend the rest of my life doing the same. But I will not destroy the evidence. History should not be erased, even when it shames us, especially when it shames us." It was signed Valerian. Hanna stood there for a long time, holding the manuscript. Then she heard footsteps. Valerian appeared in the doorway. He looked at her, looked at the manuscript in her hands, and went very still. "You found it," he said. "You wanted me to find it," Hanna said. "Yes." "Why?" Valerian stepped into the room. He closed the door behind him. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. "Because you're going to find the real missing page eventually," he said. "If it still exists, you'll find it. And when you do, you'll need to know who I am, what I've done." "This was 600 years ago," Hanna said. "Does that make it better?" "It makes it history," Hanna said. "You were dealing with a famine. You made a decision, a terrible decision. But nothing," Valerian said. "I authorized the hunting of humans. I broke the law I'm now trying to enforce. That's hypocrisy, Dr. Mercer. That's the truth." Hanna looked down at the manuscript. The ink was faded but still legible. The signature was clear. "What do you want me to do with this?" she said. "I want you to decide," Valerian said. "If you think it should be destroyed, I'll destroy it. If you think it should be kept—" "It should be kept," Hanna said immediately. Valerian stared at her. "You're sure?" "I'm a historian," Hanna said. "I don't destroy evidence, ever, even when it's ugly, especially when it's ugly." She set the manuscript down carefully. "This is part of the record. It's part of your history. You don't get to erase it just because it makes you look bad. Even if keeping it undermines everything I'm trying to do?" "It doesn't undermine it," Hanna said. "It explains it. You know what it's like to break this law. You know what it costs. That's why you're so determined to enforce it now." Valerian was very quiet. Then he said, "You're not horrified." "I'm a little horrified," Hanna admitted. "But mostly I'm—" She stopped. "Mostly I'm impressed that you kept this, that you didn't try to hide it. That matters." "Does it?" "Yes," Hanna said. "It does." They stood there in the small room, surrounded by history. Valerian looked at her the way he'd looked at her in the corridor, like he was trying to figure something out. "Dr. Mercer," he said. "Hanna," she said. "If you're going to show me your shameful decrees, you can call me Hanna." He smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "Hanna," he said, "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "There's a strong chance someone is going to try to kill you." Hanna blinked. "What?" "The session last night. You exposed 2 forgeries. You humiliated 2 very powerful factions. They're not going to let that stand." "You said I was under your protection." "You are," Valerian said. "But that doesn't mean they won't try, and I need you to be prepared." "Prepared how?" "Stay in the monastery," Valerian said. "Don't go out during the day. Don't go anywhere alone. If you need something, ask me or ask the Monsignor. Don't trust anyone else." "For how long?" "Until I can resolve this," Valerian said. "I'm working on it. But it's going to take time." Hanna felt the fear come back, cold in her stomach. "What if you can't resolve it?" "I will," Valerian said. He said it with absolute certainty. "But I need you to be safe until I do." "Okay," Hanna said. "Okay." Valerian reached out and took her hand. His fingers were cold, but his grip was gentle. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt you," he said. I know, Hanna said. And she did know. That was the absurd part. She trusted him. She trusted a 900-year-old vampire king who had just shown her proof that he'd once authorized the murder of humans. She trusted him anyway. Come on, Valerian said. I'll show you where you'll be staying. The room was on the same floor as the archive. Small, stone-walled, with a bed and a desk and a fireplace. There was a stack of books on the desk and a change of clothes folded on the chair. I took the liberty, Valerian said. I hope you don't mind. You bought me clothes? I had someone buy you clothes, Valerian said. I'm not good at that part. Despite everything, Hanna laughed. Thank you. I'll have food sent down, Valerian said. And if you need anything. I'll ask, Hanna said. I know. Valerian lingered in the doorway. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. He just nodded and left. Hanna sat down on the bed. It was comfortable, better than the hostel. She looked around the room and thought about the fact that she was now living in a vampire king's archive, under guard, because she'd authenticated 2 forgeries. Her life had gotten very strange. She stayed in the monastery for a week. During the day she slept or tried to. At night she worked in the archive, cataloging manuscripts and trying not to think about the fact that someone might be planning to murder her. Valerian was there every night. He brought her tea and food, sat with her while she worked, answered her questions about vampire history. He was good company, quiet when she needed quiet, talkative when she wanted distraction. He told her stories about the old courts, the politics and alliances that had shaped vampire society for centuries. He told her about the treaty, how hard it had been to get 7 kings to agree on anything, let alone something as fundamental as hunting law. It almost didn't happen, he said one night. They were sitting by the fire in her room, Hanna with her tea, Valerian with nothing. There were kings who wanted to keep hunting, who thought humans were livestock and we had every right to treat them as such. What changed their minds? Hanna said. Numbers, Valerian said. Humans were getting better at killing us, better weapons, better organization. We were losing vampires faster than we could replace them. The treaty was survival. So, it was self-interest. At first, Valerian said, but somewhere along the way it became more than that. We started to see humans as people, as equals, some of us anyway. You did. Eventually, Valerian said. It took me longer than it should have. Hanna looked at him. The firelight made his white hair glow. The decree, she said. The one you showed me. Do you think about it? Every day, Valerian said. Does it get easier? No, Valerian said. But I've learned to live with it. He said it simply, without self-pity. Hanna wanted to reach out and touch his hand, but she didn't. She just nodded. I think you're a good king, she said. Valerian looked at her. Why? Because you care, Hanna said. You care about the law. You care about your people. You care about humans. That matters. Even after what I did? Especially after what you did, Hanna said. You made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and you've spent 600 years trying to fix it. That's not hypocrisy, that's growth. Valerian was quiet for a long time. Then he said, You're very kind. I'm very honest, Hanna said. There's a difference. He smiled. It was the kind of smile that made him look younger, less like a king and more like a person. Hanna felt something in her chest shift and settle. Oh no, she thought. Oh no, this is a problem. On the 8th night, Valerian came to her room and said, I found the missing page. Hanna nearly dropped her tea. What? Lord Casimir had it, Valerian said. He's been holding it for 60 years. He's the one who tore it out. Why? Because he's the one who wants the law to lapse, Valerian said. He's been working on it for decades. The forgeries were his attempt to replace the page with something that would undermine the enforcement clause. When that didn't work, he tried to have you discredited. He's the one who wants me dead. He was, Valerian said. He's not anymore. What did you do? I challenged him, Valerian said. Old formal challenge, single combat. Winner takes the disputed property. Hanna stared at him. You fought him? Yes. And? I won, Valerian said. He said it the way someone might say they'd won a chess game. Casual. Easy. Are you hurt? Hanna said. No, Valerian said. I'm fine. He's not, but he'll heal. Hanna set her tea down before she spilled it. You fought a vampire lord in single combat for a manuscript page. For you, Valerian said. For the law, but mostly for you. Hanna felt her face heat. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Valerian said. He stepped closer. Hanna, I need you to understand something. You came here to catalog manuscripts. You ended up exposing a conspiracy and saving a law that's kept my people from becoming monsters. You've done more in 4 weeks than most people do in a lifetime, and you did it knowing it might get you killed. That matters to me. You matter to me. Hanna's heart was doing something complicated in her chest. Valerian. I have the page, he said. The real one. It's intact. I need you to authenticate it. Now? Now, Valerian said. There's a second session tomorrow night. I'm going to present the page and have the Concordat formally amended to include it. I need you there. Okay, Hanna said. Okay, let me see it. He handed her a leather folder. Inside was a single page of parchment, torn along one edge. The script was Vespasian's. Hanna knew it the moment she saw it. Every letter was perfect. Every ligature matched the samples she'd studied. This is it, she said. This is the real page. You're sure? I'm sure, Hanna said. She looked up at him. What does it say? It says that any vampire who breaks the hunting prohibition is stripped of their title, their property, and their protection under the law, Valerian said. It says they're exiled, permanently. No appeals. That's harsh. It's supposed to be, Valerian said. The law only works if the consequences matter. Hanna looked down at the page again. 700 years old, hidden for 60 years, and now it was back. Tomorrow night, she said. I'll be there. The second session was different from the first. There were fewer people, for one thing, just the 7 kings and their immediate courts. Valerian had explained it on the way down. This wasn't a trial. This was a formal amendment session. The page would be presented, authenticated, and added to the Concordat. It was procedural. It didn't feel procedural. Hanna stood in the center of the chamber again, the manuscript page in her hands. She'd examined it 3 times already, but she examined it again for the record. Checked the script, the parchment, the stitching. Everything matched. This is the original, she said. Her voice echoed in the stone chamber. Written by Vespasian, scribe to King Alexander of the Northern Court, circa 1324. It matches the Concordat in every particular: script, materials, binding. This is the missing page. Valerian stepped forward. He was wearing full formal clothing tonight, a long coat with silver buttons, a white shirt with lace at the cuffs. He looked like he'd stepped out of a painting. He looked like a king. The page will be added to the Concordat, he said. The law is complete. The hunting prohibition stands, and the consequences for breaking it are clear. Any objections? Silence. Then it's done, Valerian said. There was a murmur, a shifting. Hanna looked around the room. The vampires were watching her. Not with hostility this time, with something else. Respect, maybe, or at least acknowledgement. She'd done it. She'd authenticated the treaty. She'd saved the law. Valerian walked her out of the chamber. They climbed the stairs in silence. At the top, he paused. Thank you, he said. You already thanked me, Hanna said. I'm thanking you again, Valerian said. You could have walked away at any point. You didn't. That means something. I'm a historian, Hanna said. This is the most important work I've ever done. Of course I didn't walk away. It's more than that, Valerian said. You believed in the law. You believed it was worth saving. Not everyone would have. Hanna looked at him. He was standing very close, close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his hair caught the torchlight. I believed in you, she said quietly. Valerian went very still. Then he reached out and cupped her face in his hands. His palms were cold against her skin. "Hanna," he said, "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I'm in love with you," he said. "I have been for weeks, and I know that's complicated, and I know I'm not human, and I know this is probably a terrible idea, but I needed to say it." Hanna stared at him. Her brain had stopped working. "You're in love with me?" "Yes." "Since when?" "Since you fell asleep in my archive," Valerian said. "Since I carried you 11 floors and you didn't wake up once. Since I saw your notes and realized you cared about my history as much as I do. Since you stood in front of a room full of vampires and called their evidence academic nonsense." "That was last week." "I know," Valerian said. "I'm terrible at this. I should have said something sooner. But I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. You were working and you were in danger, and it didn't seem fair to—" Hanna kissed him. She had to stand on her toes to do it, and her hands ended up fisted in his coat, and his mouth was cold, but he kissed her back with the kind of intensity that made her knees weak. His hands slid into her hair, careful of the pins, and he pulled her closer. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Well, Hanna was breathing hard. Valerian just looked stunned. "I'm in love with you too," Hanna said, in case that wasn't clear. "It's clear now," Valerian said. He was grinning. "But you should probably say it again, just to be sure." "I'm in love with you," Hanna said. "You're a 900-year-old vampire king with a shameful past and a manuscript collection, and I'm in love with you." "That's very specific," Valerian said. "I'm a historian," Hanna said. "I'm always specific." He kissed her again. This time it was slower, deeper. His hand slid down her back, and she made a sound that was probably embarrassing. She didn't care. When they broke apart again, Valerian said, "I need to ask you something." "Okay." "The catalog," he said. "The work you came here to do. It's not finished." "I know," Hanna said. "I've barely made a dent. There are at least 300 manuscripts left. How long would it take you to finish?" "Years," Hanna said. "Maybe decades. Some of those manuscripts are in terrible condition. They'll need to be stabilized before I can even catalog them." "What if you had more time?" Valerian said. Hanna looked at him. His face was very serious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if you didn't have to do this in a human lifetime?" Valerian said. "What if you had longer?" Hanna's heart stopped, started again. "You're asking if I want to be turned." "I'm asking if you want to stay," Valerian said. "The catalog is important, but you're more important. If you want to finish your work and leave, I'll support that. If you want to stay human, I'll support that. But if you want to stay, if you want to finish the catalog and stay with me, then I'm offering. You want to turn me. I want you to choose," Valerian said. "Whatever you choose, I'll be happy. But I needed to ask." Hanna looked at him. 900 years old. A king. A vampire. The man who'd carried her to bed and shown her his shameful decree and fought a duel for a manuscript page. The man she loved. "I want to stay," she said. The turning was not romantic. It was clinical and precise and involved a lot of medical terminology that Hanna didn't fully understand. Valerian explained it carefully. The exchange of blood, the process, the way her body would change. It would take 3 days, he said. 3 days of pain and transformation, and then it would be done. "I'll be with you the whole time," he said. "I won't leave." "Promise?" Hanna said. "Promise," Valerian said. It hurt. It hurt more than anything Hanna had ever experienced. Her body burned and froze and twisted, and she screamed until her voice gave out. Valerian held her through all of it, his hands cool on her skin, his voice steady in her ear. "I'm here," he said. "I'm here. You're doing so well." On the 3rd day, the pain stopped. Hanna opened her eyes. The room was dark, but she could see. She could see everything, every detail, every shadow. The grain of the wood in the ceiling beams, the threads in the blanket, the way Valerian's hair fell across his face. "Hi," she said. Her voice sounded different, clearer. "Hi," Valerian said. He looked exhausted. "How do you feel?" Strange, Hanna said. Good, really good. She sat up. Her body felt different, lighter, stronger. She looked at her hands. The skin was paler, smooth. The ink stains were gone. I'm a vampire, she said. You are, Valerian said. I'm going to live forever. Probably, Valerian said, unless something kills you. But I'm going to do my best to prevent that. Hanna looked at him. He was sitting beside the bed, his hair a mess, his shirt wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, which he probably hadn't. Thank you, she said, for staying. I promised, Valerian said. Besides, where else would I be? Hanna reached out and took his hand. His fingers were cold, just like hers now. I love you, she said. I love you too, Valerian said. He leaned in and kissed her, and it was different now. Better. She could feel everything, the texture of his lips, the way his breath ghosted across her skin, the way his heartbeat synced with hers. Wait. You have a heartbeat, Hanna said. So do you, Valerian said. We're not dead. Just different. That's good to know, Hanna said. She kissed him again. This time she pulled him onto the bed, and he came willingly. They stayed there for a long time, wrapped around each other, learning the new shape of their bodies. Eventually, Valerian said, We should probably get you something to eat. I'm a vampire now, Hanna said. What do I eat? Blood, Valerian said. But we've modernized. There are blood banks, ethical sourcing. I'll show you. That's disturbingly organized. We've had a long time to work it out, Valerian said. Hanna sat up. Her body felt strong and strange and perfect. Can I go back to the archive? Right now? Right now, Hanna said. I want to see it. Valerian looked at her. Then he laughed, a sound of pure delight. Of course you do. Come on. They went down to the archive. 11 floors, but Hanna didn't get tired. She could have run the whole way. Everything was sharper now, clearer. She could hear things she'd never heard before: water running through pipes, the settling of stone, the scratch of a mouse in the walls. The archive was just as she'd left it. Manuscripts stacked on tables, her notes spread across the desk. But now she could see more. Details she'd missed. The way the candlelight reflected off the leather bindings, the texture of the parchment, the faint smell of iron gall ink and aged vellum. It's beautiful, she said. It is, Valerian said. He was watching her, not the archive. I'm going to finish this, Hanna said. I'm going to catalog every manuscript. I'm going to document everything. I know, Valerian said. It's going to take decades. I know, Valerian said. I'll be here. Hanna turned to him. You're going to help me? I'm going to watch you work, Valerian said, and bring you tea, and occasionally distract you. But yes. Hanna kissed him. It was getting easier now, this new body, this new life. Everything was sharper and clearer and better. Thank you, she said, for all of this. Thank you, Valerian said, for staying. 3 months later, Valerian made an announcement. The Coimbra archive was opening to human scholars. It was a limited opening. Researchers would need to apply, and they'd need to have a legitimate reason for access, but the archive would no longer be secret. The history it contained: vampire history, human history, the tangled record of 2 species learning to live together, would be available to anyone who wanted to study it. Including the shameful parts, Hanna said. Especially the shameful parts, Valerian said. You were right. History shouldn't be erased, even when it's ugly. The first scholar arrived in November. A young man from Oxford, studying medieval legal codes. Hanna met him at the monastery gate and led him down into the archive. She showed him the manuscripts, explained the cataloging system she'd developed, answered his questions. You're the paleographer who authenticated the blood concordat, he said. I read your article. It's brilliant. Thank you, Hanna said. She'd published the article through a human journal, using the photographs and notes she'd taken. It had caused a minor sensation in academic circles. Most people thought it was about a historical treaty. Only a few knew the truth. Is it true you work for the Vampire King? The scholar said. I work with him, Hanna said. There's a difference. What's he like? Hanna thought about it. Valerian was upstairs, dealing with some kind of political situation she didn't fully understand. He'd be down later once the scholar left. They'd work together in the quiet of the archive, sorting manuscripts and arguing about dating methods and occasionally stopping to kiss in the stacks. He's a good king, Hanna said. And a good man, even when it's complicated. The scholar nodded, satisfied. He went back to his manuscripts. Hanna returned to her desk. There was a new stack of documents waiting for her, brought up from the lower levels. She'd found another room last week, hidden behind a false wall. More manuscripts, more history. Enough work to keep her busy for another century at least. She heard footsteps on the stairs. Light, familiar. Valerian appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of tea. He set one in front of her and kept the other for himself. He'd started drinking tea with her, even though he didn't need it. It was a ritual now. "How's the scholar?" he said. "Polite," Hanna said, very excited about the rent rolls. "Everyone loves a good rent roll," Valerian said. He leaned against her desk. "I have news. Good news or bad news?" "Good news," Valerian said. "The amendment was ratified. The Concordat is officially complete." "That's wonderful," Hanna said. "And they want to add a note," Valerian said. "In the manuscript, documenting the authentication process." "What kind of note?" "A colophon," Valerian said. "Crediting you as the expert who verified the treaty and recovered the missing page." Hanna stared at him. "They want to put my name in the Concordat?" "Yes," Valerian said. "Is that all right?" Hanna stopped. "That's the most incredible thing anyone's ever offered me." "You earned it," Valerian said. "You saved the law. You should be remembered for it." Hanna stood up and kissed him. He wrapped his arms around her, and she felt the familiar cold of his skin, the steady beat of his heart. Her heart. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," Valerian said. "Now get back to work. You have 300 manuscripts left." 347, Hanna corrected. 347, Valerian agreed. "But who's counting?" Hanna sat back down. She opened the next manuscript, a folio from the 1400s, and started to read. Valerian settled into the chair across from her with his own book. The archive was quiet except for the scratch of her pen and the turning of pages. Outside, the world continued, humans and vampires, learning to live together. A law that had been saved, a treaty that would endure. And in the archive, deep beneath a Portuguese monastery, a paleographer and a king worked side by side. They had centuries ahead of them, centuries to catalog and document and preserve, centuries to argue and laugh and love. Hanna looked up from her manuscript. Valerian was watching her, a small smile on his face. "What?" she said. "Nothing," Valerian said. "I'm just happy." "Me too," Hanna said. She went back to her work. The manuscript was in Vespasian's hand, the script clear and elegant. She transcribed it carefully, noting every detail. When she finished, she would add it to the finding aid that bore her name. The archive's doors were open now. The history it contained would be shared. And Hanna Mercer, paleographer, vampire, beloved of King Valerian Jaal, would spend the rest of her very long life making sure it was preserved. It was, she thought, the best possible ending, and the best possible beginning.